Rain hammered the rusted fence as Jack slipped through a gap, one hand holding his threadbare backpack, the other keeping Molly, his gray-muzzled mutt, close at heel. He'd been hunting shelters since dawn, walking the industrial fringe where the city forgot its promises. The sign on the chain-link gate read, "Closed," letters bleached by years of Sunday. Beyond it, a skeleton carnival waited, a tilted Ferris wheel, a carousel with chipped horses, neon letters missing teeth, lightning flashed. Jack paused, chest heaving, and whispered, "Just a night." Molly wagged, uncertainly. They stepped inside the abandoned amusement park and listened hard. Wind carried the smell of wet plywood, old grease, and cotton candy long dissolved into dust. Jack knew the scents like postcards from a forgotten life. County fairs, Saturday paychecks, a daughter laughing between rides. He pushed the memory away before it sharpened to pain. Tonight mattered. Shelter mattered. He checked the carousel house first, Molly trotting ahead, nails ticking softly. Broken bulbs encircled the ceiling like a crown of dim stars. He tested a door, found it stuck, then shouldered through with a grunt. Inside, rain drummed the roof, while silence gathered around their breathing. Molly lay beside him. He unrolled a tarp, shook it twice, and spread it across a bench painted with peeling roses. Molly circled, curled into a tight crescent, and sighed like an accordion, settling to sleep. Jack chewed 2 crackers, saving the last 3 for morning. The dark adjusted, shapes grew edges. On the far wall hung a map of the park, sun-faded, with a faded arrow. "You are here." He stood beneath it and traced the ghostly pathways with a dirty finger, memorizing safe routes. The Ferris wheel, maintenance shed, ticket office, fun house, office. Office meant wiring. Wiring sometimes meant power at last. Morning brought a weak sky, pale as dishwater through the broken skylights. Jack stretched, joints creaking like old boards, then filled Molly's bowl with water from his bottle. She lapped, tail thumping, grateful for rituals that made them feel human. He stepped back outside. The park looked different by daylight, less haunted, more wounded. He walked the midway, reading hand-painted signs. TILTA Shooting Gallery, Lemon Ice. Weeds pushed everywhere, stubborn and green. At the far end, the office door hung crooked. He jimmied the lock with a flattened spoon and a prayer he barely remembered how to say that rainy year. Inside, dust lay thick as felt. A desk waited beneath a collapsed calendar from 14 summers ago. July squares filled with neat handwriting, staff rotations, maintenance checks, free entry day. Jack opened drawers carefully, palms open, expecting mice. Instead, he found a ring of keys, heavy and labeled with tape. Gates, power, rides, cash office. He turned the power key over in his hand, heartbeat climbing. Molly's ears perked. "Don't look at me like that," he said. "We're only checking." Down the hall, a breaker room waited, humming faintly, like a song trapped behind a closed door, waiting since forever. He flipped one breaker, then another, careful, listening, ready to retreat. Somewhere distant, a transformer coughed. A chain of bulbs along the midway stuttered, then glowed weakly, like tired fireflies remembering their job. Jack laughed, startled by the sound of his own voice. Molly barked once, prancing, as if the light meant breakfast. He shut down again, memorizing which switches mattered. Power was hope, but power also drew attention. He had learned that the hard way in places where warmth meant questions. Today he would take it slow. One line, one outlet, one working bulb at a time for Molly. He spent the afternoon cleaning a corner of the carousel house, sweeping glass into a bucket, folding a tarp into a passable bed. He found a stack of staff shirts in a closet, washed to transparency by time. He tied one around Molly as a makeshift vest. She strutted proudly, tail doing metronome duty. Then he pried open a stubborn vending machine with patient hands and a borrowed screwdriver. 2 bottled waters clinked into the tray, followed by a stubborn packet of peanuts. "We'll call that dinner," he said. Molly agreed wholeheartedly. For the first evening, they felt safe together. After dark, he walked the midway like a night watchman, Molly padding beside him. He checked gates, noted weak boards, and marked slick spots with chalk. The Ferris wheel loomed like a moon dial against the bruised sky. At its base, a plaque carried names of donors and the year the park opened. Jack traced a few letters, wondering about families who once stood right here, sharing tickets and arguments and sugar. Near the funhouse, he found a row of lockers and a coin tray. 1 quarter remained, dull as a pebble. He pocketed it, feeling inexplicably rich that night. Sleep came in slices, thunder cracked. Somewhere a raccoon skittered across metal. Molly woofed softly, then settled again, chin on Jack's ankle. He dreamed of lights returning, crowds laughing, a brass band playing "You Are My Sunshine." He woke to the softest sound, a car idling beyond the fence. He waited, breath held, counting. The engine faded away. He lay back down, eyes open now, and stared at the painted horses staring back. "Tomorrow," he whispered. "We make this place pay rent." Molly thumped her tail once, as if to sign the lease for them both for one more night. Morning smelled like wet grass and possibility. Jack brewed coffee on a camp stove he'd carried since the winter that broke him, the flame a blue jewel inside the drafty building. Molly dozed with her muzzle on his boot. He sketched a list on the back of a map. Clear paths, secure gates, check rides for hazards, find clean water, locate a power tap for lights near the entrance. People avoided darkness. People respected order. If he could make the park look less dangerous, maybe it could become something gentler. A refuge, a place to breathe, a neighborhood living room. He started with trash bags and patience. The midway surrendered cups, tickets, straws, a pink shoe without its pair. He stacked broken boards and screwed down the ones that could be saved. Molly trotted ahead, nose busy, then barked at a nest of bees humming inside a cotton candy kiosk. Jack bowed respectfully and gave them wide berth, bargaining for peace with creatures that knew how to build sugar from air. By noon, the place already looked less like a ruin, not pretty yet, but organized. He wiped sweat with his sleeve and grinned without meaning to, for a change. At the carousel, he tested each brass pole, rocking them gently, listening for the betrayals of rot. The platform groaned in 2 places. He marked them with red chalk he found in a drawer. He tightened bolts, replaced a board with one scavenged from the funhouse wall, and swept again. Then, he stared at the control panel. The key from the office dangled heavy in his pocket, heating with possibility. He slid it in, didn't turn it, not yet. Earn it, he told himself. Earn the moment, Molly wagged, as if agreeing that some magic should wait a little longer. By late afternoon, 2 teenagers wandered in, through the gap in the fence, phones up, filming everything like urban archaeologists. Jack stiffened. Molly barked once, then Saturday. "We're not cops," the taller one said quickly. "We just like old stuff." Jack weighed possibilities, then pointed to a safer path. "Stay on the painted boards," he said. "No running." They followed, whispering. One filmed the carousel, its horses gleaming dully. "This place could be beautiful again," the shorter one murmured. Jack felt the words punch through some tired wall inside his chest. "Maybe," he said, surprised to hear himself believe it. Word traveled faster than caution. By the week's end, a mother with a stroller paused at the fence, peering in. Jack met her at the gate. "We're not open," he said. "Just cleaning." She looked at Molly, who wore her staff shirt like a security badge, and smiled. "I used to come here as a kid," she said. "If you ever need help." She handed him a bag, bottled water, granola bars, a folded first aid kit. Jack blinked hard. After she left, he set the bag on the carousel bench and whispered, "Payment received. Terms, kindness, due date, ongoing, forever." On Friday, he finally turned the key. The carousel shuddered, groaned, and then a single bulb winked awake, followed by another, the rings of yellow climbing the ceiling. The motor coughed like an old man clearing his throat. The platform rotated half a notch and stopped. Jack killed the power, listening to the sudden hush fill in around them. He wasn't ready to ride. He was ready to test. He tightened belts, oiled gears with cooking spray, and replaced a frayed wire using a length borrowed from a popcorn machine. Progress didn't sing. It clicked, gathered, promised, waited for tomorrow. Saturday morning brought volunteers he hadn't asked for. The teenagers returned with gloves and a broom. The mother came with her brother, who knew electrical work. An old man from the neighborhood shuffled in, carrying a toolbox older than the park. "Name's Arthur," he said. "Used to keep the tilt-a-whirl honest." They worked quietly at first, strangers orbiting tasks, then talking as muscles warmed and trust found handholds. Molly supervised, basking in every compliment like sunshine she could wear. By afternoon, the midway looked less like a crime scene and more like a project. Projects invite futures and good neighbors. Late that day, Arthur showed Jack a folder he'd rescued from a rusted file cabinet. Inside were financial ledgers, permits, and a letter on letterhead, a promise from the landowner 30 years ago to keep the park for public joy as long as the rides could safely run. The signature matched the plaque on the Ferris wheel. Jack read the line twice, 3 times. He wasn't a lawyer, but he understood promises. He had broken a few and regretted them daily. He tucked the folder beneath his shirt like armor, felt its weight, and finally allowed himself a hope tonight. At sunset, when the sky bled orange behind the wheel's steel ribs, Jack set 3 folding chairs on the midway and poured paper cups of lemonade from a salvage dispenser. Arthur raised his cup. The teenagers toasted with theirs, wagging Molly's paw in mock salute. People walking dogs slowed, peered through the fence, and smiled at the ridiculous ceremony. Jack swallowed hard against the lump rising uninvited. He had learned to survive alone, but rebuilding apparently required other beating hearts, and they were showing up anyway. "To small starts," he said. "To safe rides," Arthur replied. "To tomorrow," whispered Molly's tags. That night, as wind rattled the prize booth shutters, Jack wrote a sign on cardboard and wired it to the entrance. "Community cleanup. Sunday, noon. Bring gloves." He added in smaller letters, "Children, welcome. Dogs too." He stared at the words until they stopped looking like an invitation and started feeling like a dare. He'd been chased from doorways, shooed from benches, forgotten by every system designed to help. Now he was asking strangers to step into his fragile beginning and not crush it. He slept lightly, one hand on the office keys, the other on Molly's back, all night. Sunday arrived warm and bright, like a promise you hesitate to trust. People came, not many, just enough. A mail carrier on his day off, 2 teens with skateboards, Arthur in a clean shirt, the mother with her stroller, a nurse still in scrubs, 3 kids chasing bubbles that drifted from somewhere. They hauled brush, painted rails, scrubbed graffiti from the entrance sign. Halfway through, a city car rolled up and a suited woman stepped out, eyes cool, clipboard tucked tight. She looked from Jack to the plaque, to the growing crowd, and said evenly, "Who's in charge here?" Jack. The woman's heels clicked on cracked asphalt as she walked closer, clipboard tight under her arm. "City redevelopment," she said. "This land belongs to the municipal board." Jack wiped his hands on his jeans. "Belonged," he corrected quietly. "Been empty for years." She tilted her head. "Squatting isn't a lease, mister." "Just Jack," he said. Molly growled softly. The woman sighed. "You and your volunteers need to vacate by Monday." She turned to leave, but Arthur stepped forward. "Lady, you got a heart under that jacket. We're fixing what you forgot." She didn't answer, only wrote something and walked away. Jack stood watching the city car disappear down the road. The crowd shifted uneasily. "She can't just," the mother began, but Jack raised a hand. "It's fine. We knew this wasn't forever." Arthur shook his head. "Forever's what you make with 2 nails and a will, son." Jack smiled faintly, grateful for the old man's stubborn optimism. He looked around. The painted rails, the swept paths, the laughter of kids chasing bubbles. "Let's clean 1 more hour," he said. "If we're leaving, we'll leave it shining." No one argued. They worked until dusk bled through the carousel windows quietly. That night, Jack couldn't sleep. The eviction order echoed in his head like a broken bell. Molly snored beside him, twitching through dreams of better chases. Jack stared at the ceiling. "We built something real," he whispered. "And now they'll bulldoze it." He sat up, rubbing his temples. On the desk lay Arthur's folder, the one with the old promise letter. He opened it again, reading the ornate handwriting. "For public joy, as long as the rides can safely run." A thought flickered. Maybe promises written right didn't expire so easy. Maybe the park still belonged to those who cared. Morning brought decision. Jack packed the folder in his backpack and told Molly, "We're taking a field trip, girl." They walked the 2 miles to City Hall, dodging traffic and curious glances. Inside, the marble floors gleamed like water. The clerk behind the counter frowned at Jack's dirt-streaked face. "You need assistance?" "Legal records," he said. "Land deeds, Section 12B, Lot 43, the Amusement Park on Brighton Road." The clerk tapped his keyboard. "Demolition request filed last year. Clearance pending final approval." Jack nodded. "Mind if I see the original ownership papers?" The man sighed, but printed copies anyway. Jack unfolded the documents on the bench outside. The names matched. Reeves, Family Holdings, 1,962. Transfer clause. Land to remain recreational use under public trust. He smiled grimly. So that lady's boss is skipping details. Molly tilted her head, licking her paw. Yeah, we're going back, partner. On the way out, he bumped into someone coffee spilling, papers flying. Watch it, the man barked. Jack apologized, stooping to help. One page caught his eye. City Development Proposal Brighton Towers Project. The same land. The man snatched it back, glaring. Mind your business. Jack smiled slowly. Already doing that. By the time he reached the park, the volunteers were waiting anxiously. What did they say? The nurse asked. Jack laid the papers on a carousel bench. They said we're not trespassing. We're caretakers. Arthur squinted. That true? Jack nodded. Clause says, as long as it's for public use and safe operation, this land stays community ground. Cheers rippled softly. The teenagers high-fived. The mother hugged her kid tight. Molly barked twice for emphasis. Jack raised a hand. We keep fixing, but we do it right. Organized, careful, safe. We don't fight the city with fists. We fight 'em with proof. 2 days later, a local reporter showed up a young woman with too much camera gear and not enough patience. You're the guy who took over the amusement park? She asked. I didn't take it, Jack said. Just dusted it off. She filmed the carousel, the volunteers painting benches, Arthur lecturing a teen about bold tightness. Why bother? She asked. It's just junk. Jack gestured around. You see junk. They see hope. Kids need somewhere to laugh that doesn't cost $10 a ride. Her expression softened. Mind if I come back tomorrow? Only if you bring coffee, he said, smiling. The next morning, the story aired on local news. Homeless man restores abandoned Park City, calls it unauthorized occupation. Comments flooded in online, some mocking, some praising. Donations trickled through community boards. A retired electrician arrived with wires. A teacher brought paint from her art class. The carousel lights grew brighter each day. Jack walked the midway at sunset, watching reflections glow on Molly's fur. You ever think we'd run a park, girl? She barked proudly. Yeah, me neither. For the first time in years, he wasn't invisible. That scared him more than sleeping under bridges ever had. The city struck back fast. An official notice stapled to the gate. Vacate or face prosecution. Arthur tore it down in disgust. You'd think we robbed a bank. Jack kept it folded in his pocket, waiting. That evening, the same suited woman returned with 2 officers. You've ignored the order, she said sharply. You've ignored history, he replied, handing her a copy of the deed clause. We're within our rights. She read it, frowning. This can't be binding. Maybe check before you bulldoze kindness, Arthur muttered. One officer smirked. Let's verify, she said tightly, and turned away to call. Days blurred with paperwork and anxiety. Jack spent hours scanning copies at the library, while volunteers cleaned and guarded the park. Molly stayed near the carousel, loved by everyone. One afternoon, a teenager ran up breathless. The city lawyer's here. Jack hurried back. The lawyer, a gray-haired man in a blue suit, stood by the Ferris wheel with the official. He read the document carefully, lips moving. Clause stands, he said finally. Public trust law still applies. The official's jaw clenched. Then we'll appeal. You can, he said calmly. But until then, they stay. Cheers erupted. Molly barked until hoarse. That night, the carousel turned again, lights warm and steady. Jack sat with Arthur, watching kids laugh as they climbed onto painted horses. "Think it'll last?" Arthur asked. "Nothing lasts," Jack said, "but sometimes it lives long enough." He patted Molly's back. "That's plenty." They sat until the generator sputtered quiet. The park slept under its first stars of peace. But deep down, Jack knew bureaucrats didn't lose gracefully. He'd need to stay sharp. For once, he wasn't running from a fight. He was standing guard for a promise written decades before he was born, now beating again. The next week, the city sent inspectors. Hard hats, clipboards, skeptical eyes. Jack guided them through every corner, pointing out repairs, showing safety measures. They measured bolts, checked rails, nodded grudgingly. "You've done better work than half our crews," one admitted. Jack smiled. "Experience," he said. "Lived enough places falling apart to know how to hold things together." By day's end, they signed temporary clearance for public access. "No rides yet," the lead inspector warned. "But grounds are safe. That's all we need," Jack said softly. The crowd clapped when he told them. Molly got an extra sandwich that night. Within a month, the park was unrecognizable. Fresh paint, lit paths, repaired benches. Children ran laughing between stalls where volunteers handed out lemonade and popcorn. The carousel lights spun fully for the first time in 15 years. Jack stood beside it, watching a little boy ride the golden horse, mouth wide with joy. "We did it," Arthur said beside him. "No, they did," Jack corrected. "We just gave him the key." He turned slowly toward the gate and froze. The suited woman was back, but not alone. A younger woman in designer clothes stood beside her, curious, silent, assessing everything. The official introduced her. "This is Miss Bennett, the landowner's daughter." The younger woman smiled politely. "My father passed recently," she said. "This property reverted to me. I saw the news reports." Jack nodded warily. "Then you know what we've built." She looked around, eyes resting on the carousel, on Molly sprawled contentedly near the lemonade stand. "It's beautiful," she admitted. "But it's still private land." The crowd hushed. Jack's stomach turned. "Your father signed a public trust," he said. She nodded. "I know. I'm not here to take it. I'm here to see why he cared so much." She spent the day walking through the park, talking to volunteers, watching children play. That evening, she approached Jack near the Ferris wheel. "I grew up here," she said softly. "My father used to bring me every Saturday. When the park closed, he never smiled the same again." Jack studied her face. He'd be proud now. She looked at him, eyes shining. "Maybe he'd be proud of you too." She handed him an envelope. "For repairs, no strings attached." He opened it later, enough money to keep the lights on all year. Molly barked approval. Arthur nearly cried from joy. As weeks passed, the city relented. The park gained legal recognition as a community project under Miss Bennett's patronage. A sign appeared at the entrance. "Brighton Park, free to all." Jack refused the title of manager, calling himself maintenance man with benefits. Molly became the official mascot, complete with a new tag engraved, Chief of Security. Crowds grew each weekend. Local bands played on the repaired stage. Children painted murals across the funhouse wall. And every sunset, Jack sat by the carousel, wiping its brass with slow, reverent strokes, as if polishing gratitude itself into every reflection. But success carried weight. With attention came reporters, donations, and eventually a question that haunted Jack. What happens when the lights outlast him? One evening, he gathered Arthur, Miss Bennet and the volunteers. This place can depend on one tired man, he said. We'll start a foundation managed by you all. They agreed eagerly. Miss Bennet smiled. You've done more for this land than any investor ever did. Jack shrugged. I just didn't leave. He glanced at Molly. We're good at that, staying put once we find home. The room fell quiet, each person knowing exactly what that meant. That night, Jack locked the gate and sat on the curb, watching the last lights fade across the Ferris wheel. Molly rested her head on his knee. Looks better than any skyline, he said. She barked softly, tail thumping. He reached into his pocket and took out the old letter, the original promise, edges frayed, ink fading. Guess you kept your word, Mr. Reeves, he murmured. And we kept ours. A breeze lifted the paper from his hand, sending it spinning upward into the glowing sky. He didn't chase it. Some promises, once free, didn't need witnesses anymore. They simply stayed true. The next morning, the city woke to headlines. Community Park officially reopens after 15 years. Photos showed smiling children, volunteers, and Jack in his battered jacket waving awkwardly beside Molly. The caption read, Hope needs no suit. He laughed when Arthur showed him. They spelled my name wrong. Better than spelling it never, Arthur said. Jack patted his shoulder. We did okay, old man. He looked toward the horizon where the Ferris wheel turned lazily in the morning Sunday. We did okay. Molly barked once, chasing a butterfly, and for the first time, Jack felt time slow into peace. The storm arrived with no warning. Wind ripped through the rusted gates, bending the carousel flags until they snapped. Jack stood beneath the Ferris wheel, staring at the horizon flashing with white fire. It's gonna be rough, girl, he murmured. Molly barked once, tail low. The first raindrop landed on his cheek like a cold reminder that peace never lasted long. Get the tools, he called to Arthur. Volunteers scattered, grabbing ropes and tarps. The storm wasn't just weather. It felt personal, as if the city itself were testing whether their fragile miracle deserved to survive another sunrise. Rain came hard and sideways, pounding against every surface. Jack's jacket soaked through instantly. The wind howled, rattling the midway signs and sending a cascade of paper cups skittering across puddles. Generators cutting out, Arthur shouted, shielding his eyes. Shut it down before it fries. Jack sprinted toward the shed, feet sliding on slick pavement. Lightning split the sky, freezing him mid-stride like a photograph. He dove inside just as the generator sputtered, coughing sparks. The smell of ozone and oil filled the air. He slammed the emergency switch, and suddenly the park went silent, pitch black, except for thunderlight. Jack leaned against the wall, panting. You okay, girl? He called. Molly barked faintly from outside, voice nearly drowned by the storm. Stay back, he yelled. He knew this weather angry, wild, unpredictable. He grabbed a flashlight and peered through the rain-streaked window. The carousel roof was shaking violently, its supports bending like bones. Arthur was yelling something, gesturing frantically. Jack didn't think he just ran. Hold it steady, he shouted, diving through the mud toward the center post. He threw his shoulder against the support beam as thunder cracked overhead. The beam groaned, as though protesting being saved. Wood splintered. Jack stumbled backward as part of the roof peeled away like a page torn from a book. He shielded his head, rolling aside as a section collapsed. Debris crashed around him, splinters, metal shards, and the twisted echo of music from a broken speaker. "Jack!" Arthur shouted. "Get out of there!" He ignored him, dragging the fallen tarp to cover exposed wires sparking under the rain. "Come on, hold together," he muttered through gritted teeth. Molly barked and lunged forward, but Arthur grabbed her collar. "Stay," he commanded. The dog whimpered, watching her human fight the impossible storm. When it was finally over, silence fell heavy, broken only by the dripping of rain. Jack stood in the middle of the carousel, soaked, filthy, shaking but alive. The roof was half gone, but the horses still stood, their painted faces chipped yet defiant. He reached out, running a muddy hand along one's neck. "You're tougher than you look," he whispered. Molly bounded up, tail wagging weakly. Arthur appeared beside him, panting. "You're insane," he said, half smiling. Jack laughed, coughing hard. "Maybe," he said, "but she's still standing." They stared up together at the cracked ceiling. "Guess that counts," Arthur said softly. At dawn, volunteers returned, stepping carefully through puddles and debris. The air smelled of rain, smoke, and survival. The Ferris wheel leaned slightly, but it was still upright. Jack sat on the curb, exhausted, Molly's head on his knee. The mother from the neighborhood knelt beside him. "You saved it," she said quietly. Jack shook his head. "We saved it." She smiled through tears. "You really think it can be fixed?" He looked up at the shattered carousel. "Everything can be fixed," he said. "You just have to decide it's worth the work." Around them, the park waited for its next breath. The following week, repair became ritual. Hammer strikes, brushstrokes, laughter echoing through scaffolds. Miss Bennet arrived daily with coffee and paint. "You're the most stubborn man I've ever met," she teased, handing him a mug. Jack smirked. "Takes one to recognize one." They worked side by side, she painting railings, he replacing boards until their shadows grew long and golden. "You could have walked away," she said once. "Why didn't you?" Jack shrugged. "Because it's home. First place I built instead of borrowed." She nodded, eyes softening. "My father would have liked that." "Your father had good taste," Jack said, smiling faintly. When the park reopened, the crowd filled every inch of the midway. Children ran ahead, tugging their parents' hands. Volunteers wore matching shirts that read, "Brighten Lives Again." Reporters lined up for interviews, but Jack stayed near the entrance, watching quietly. "Speech!" someone yelled. He shook his head. "I fix, I don't talk." Arthur laughed. "You do both now." Reluctantly, Jack stepped forward. "We didn't build this park for fame," he said, voice trembling. "We built it so people could believe in second chances again, for places, for each other, for themselves." Applause thundered louder than the storm that tried to end it. The mayor himself approached afterward, offering a stiff handshake. "You've done something remarkable here," he said. Jack smiled faintly. "We just cleaned up what the city forgot." The mayor chuckled awkwardly. "You're a difficult man to thank." "Guess that's why it works," Jack replied. That night, when the park emptied, he and Molly walked the midway alone. The Ferris wheel glowed like a halo against the sky. Jack sat on a bench, pulling out his battered notebook. He wrote slowly, "If you hold on long enough, even ruins remember what they were built for." Molly lay down, sighing contentedly. Months passed. Seasons turned. The park thrived. School trips arrived weekly. Buskers played by the carousel, and Jack, once invisible, became a quiet legend. Kids called him the Park Man. He taught them how to fix bolts, patch wood, and treat tools with respect. He never spoke about where he'd come from. One afternoon, Miss Bennet found him tightening the Ferris wheel's gears. "Do you ever think about leaving?" she asked. He smiled. "Left everywhere else. Didn't like it." She studied him. "You've changed this place." Jack nodded. "No," he said. "It changed me first," Molly barked, as if agreeing completely. Years later, time finally caught up. Jack's hair silvered, his hands shook a little more, but the fire never left his eyes. He spent mornings feeding pigeons by the gate, afternoons polishing the carousel brass. Children who once came to play now brought their own kids, waving as they passed. Miss Bennet visited often, her business suit traded for paint-stained jeans. "You'll retire someday," she teased. Jack laughed. "Retire from what? Living?" He patted Molly, older now, moving slower. "She's my clock. When she stops, I'll stop." Miss Bennet smiled sadly. "Then let's make sure that's a long way off." The years blurred into routine. Rain, laughter, repairs, coffee. One winter evening, Jack stayed after closing, oiling the carousel bearings while Molly slept near the heater. The park lights reflected in her tired eyes. He looked at her and whispered, "We did good, huh?" She thumped her tail weakly. He leaned back against a painted horse, closing his eyes. Outside, snow began to fall softly, settling over the rise like forgiveness. When Arthur found him the next morning, the oil can lay on its side, his notebook open on the bench. The final line read, "Keep the lights on." They buried Jack beneath the Ferris wheel, where the morning light always fell first. Molly's collar hung from the gate beside a small plaque. He kept the lights on. Miss Bennet cried quietly during the ceremony, her hand resting on Arthur's shoulder. The park closed for one day, the rides silent in respect. That evening, when they reopened, the carousel lights turned on automatically, though no one had flipped the switch. The crowd gasped softly. Arthur chuckled through tears. Guess he found the breaker. The park glowed brighter that night than ever before. Some promises simply refused to die. The city honored him with a statue a year later. A bronze Jack sitting on a bench with Molly at his feet, both looking toward the carousel. The inscription read, "Jack Turner, the man who gave hope a second chance." Visitors left flowers, tools, even small toys. Kids touched Molly's sculpted head for luck before every ride. Miss Bennet stood before it each morning, whispering, "Thank you." She had turned the park into a non-profit foundation, providing shelter, jobs, and free entry for families. "You'd laugh at all the paperwork," she said once, smiling up at the statue. "But it's worth it." 5 years passed. The park became a landmark, featured in magazines as a miracle of community revival. Every spring, they held Jack and Molly Day, where volunteers cleaned, painted, and repaired everything together. Children painted murals of the dog chasing butterflies, of Jack holding a wrench like a sword. During the ceremony, Arthur, now too frail to work, said softly, "Funny, isn't it? A man with nothing left fixed the one thing we all needed." Miss Bennet nodded. "He didn't fix it," she said. "He reminded us how to care." The crowd applauded, and somewhere a breeze stirred the chimes. That night, when the park emptied, Miss Bennet lingered by Jack's bench. The stars shimmered above, reflected in the Ferris wheel glass. She sat down, whispering, "We kept the lights on, Jack." A faint gust moved through the rides, spinning the carousel once. The horses gleamed faintly in the dark. golden even without power. "You can rest now," she said softly. A dog barked faintly in the distance, then another. She smiled, wiping her eyes. "Yeah," she whispered. "I hear you." She stood and walked toward the gate, leaving footprints glowing faintly under the park's quiet, endless glow. The park remained alive long after the people who built it were gone. New caretakers came, teenagers who'd once filmed its ruins now ran maintenance crews. Artists painted new murals every summer. Families picnicked under the Ferris wheel, and Molly's bronze collar gleamed brighter with every touch. Children who'd never known Jack spoke his name as if he were still around, hiding somewhere behind the cotton candy stand, ready with a wrench and a smile. Legends, they said, never leave the places they save, and Brighton Park, once forgotten, was forever his living, breathing proof of that truth.